It's time for the 30 Years of Summer, a Lucha Review tradition where I take a look at video games, movies, and all kinds of pop culture that is celebrating a 30th anniversary. When I think back to the summer, there was no greater place for me to be than the arcade. And in 1991, we got a taste of WWF WrestleFest. So tonight in our main event, right here on Lucha Review on the first night of the 30 Years of Summer, we got the biggest challenge that we've ever seen. We are being challenged by Hulkamania. We've got an army of warriors at the doorstep. We got Sergeant Slaughter looking to rain terror. We got Mr. Perfect thinking that he's better than anybody else. And we also got Jake the Snake Roberts looking to poison us with the little animals that he keeps in his basement. Well, boys, you've come to the right spot. You're in for the fight of your lives. You're in the Lucha Review arena where we take on the nerdy and dirty. So tag yourselves in. Let's go.
You'd think arcades and wrestling would go together like peanut butter and jelly, but history told us otherwise. The late 80s were a time of peak success for both industries, yet the crossovers were mostly unsuccessful. Some of them were just plain horrible. Even WWF Superstars was a little rough. That was until its sequel was unleashed in 1991. It was called WrestleFest and was inspired by a crossover promotion between Super World of Sports and the World Wrestling Federation held earlier that year in Tokyo. And it was gigantic. It had the biggest roster ever seen in a wrestling arcade game, represented by beautiful sprites and with the moves and mannerisms used by their real-life counterparts. The rules were simple. Choose 2 wrestlers and make team. Use combination play and keep beating some games. Everybody get that? No? Okay, let me try to explain it a different way. Just like in the Superstars game, wrestling fans could pick their favorite stars to assemble their ultimate dream team and battle their way to the Tag Team Championships. Most players picked Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior, but I remained loyal to Demolition. A wrestler's health meter determined how close he was to getting pinned, but his stamina determined how long he could go without a tag, and you were on your own to figure that out. There was no meter. Even if you had the fastest fingers in the arcade, you still ran the risk of overworking a wrestler if you didn't tag him out every once in a while, and the results were often disastrous. So, while WrestleFest looks like a mindless button masher, and even feels like one at times, the reality is that it had a better grasp of tag team wrestling psychology than most wrestling games have today. The best way to avoid exhaustion was to cut the ring in half, rely on quick tags, keep your opponent isolated from his partner, and employ double team attacks to inflict major damage. Or you could just keep hemorrhaging quarters to keep your team fresh. Truth told, you'd find yourself on that road eventually, because your team only regained a minor amount of health with each win. And who was waiting for you at the end of that road? The Road Warriors, pun intended. Also known as the Legion of Doom, Hawk and Animal were the only non-playable characters in WrestleFest, and as the boss characters, they stood between you and the Tag Team Championships. Good for you if you made it that far on just one credit, but if you didn't have another few quarters in your pocket, the Road Warriors were going to eat your lunch. Of course, it's wrestling, so weapons like chairs and tables were available for use, but nothing was going to knock the shit out of you better than a steel cage. To my knowledge, WrestleFest is the first wrestling game to make use of a steel cage, and if you recognize it for the weapon that it was a godsend. But it wasn't the cage matches that kept us coming back. It was the Royal Rumble! Featuring the $1 Million Man, the Animal, Sergeant Slaughter, Earthquake, Mr. Perfect! Crush! The Big Boss Man! Take the Snake Roberts! Hawk! And Hawk Hogan! This was the first attempt at putting the Royal Rumble in a video game, and its presentation was as true to life as primitive game technology would allow. Its execution, however, took a few liberties as the rules were a little convoluted. Case in point, choose one wrestler and beat wrestlers one after another come to fight. Get them out of the ring and get fall and be a champion. So we had to learn on the go. It was possible to eliminate your opponents by tossing them out of the ring, but it was way easier to just pin a guy, especially whenever someone helped you out by forming a pileup. No more than 6 guys were allowed in there at a time, and new challengers didn't enter at timed intervals. They would just replace the last guy to be eliminated, giving you no time to recuperate. As fast as this action was, the countdown clock was even faster. You see that clock down there? You see how fast it's going? The developer's name was Technos. The name surely comes from the word technology, right? Well, in 1991, technology didn't get much simpler than a clock. But for WrestleFest, a legitimate countdown was too fucking complicated, and you literally had to buy more time by popping in more quarters. Arguably, WrestleFest is the first game to take advantage of microtransactions. At the arcade, where everything was pay to play, this game was the first pay to win, but that never stopped me from grabbing my wallet. This champion was aesthetically pleasing, had a massive star-studded roster, and provided non-stop excitement for up to 4 players. It was the arcade game that wrestling fans were waiting for, and to this day, I still enjoy playing it. And that'll do it for this week's journey into the 30 years of summer. Thanks for tagging in. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.